Hello dear students, welcome to Bajirao Ias Academy interview guidance program. So in this session we have a few topics. One is new national education policy 2020 and the other topic is anti-defection law. So both these topics are very important for your interview preparation, and UPSC has trend that these questions on these topics has already asked by UPSC. So firstly we will understand what is new national education policy, what are its major provisions, and why India requires such a national education policy in this context. Okay, so secondly we will also understand the basic nuances of the anti-defection law. So if you carefully understand the national education policy, so it actually aims to transform India into a vibrant knowledge society and global knowledge superpower. So please remember these two words. So they are very important. First, vibrant knowledge society and global knowledge superpower. So so how can the national education policy make India achieve these two objectives? By focusing on school and college education and making it more holistic, flexible, multidisciplinary. So that particularly suits to the 21st century needs and requirements. Okay, now what does this mean? So in 21st century, so we have been focusing on vocational education, skill development and academia industry linkages, so that the employability of the youth can be increased, and also we are focusing on improving the learning outcomes and developing the innovative mind among these young minds. So therefore the education which suits to the 21st century needs, and it actually aimed at bringing out the unique capabilities of each student. Okay, so National Education Policy 2020 has a set of important provisions. So first major objective of National Education Policy is universalization of education from preschool to the secondary level. Okay, so universalization generally means achieving the 100% gross enrollment ratio in school education. So there will be no dropouts and there will be no children who are out of school. So that is achieving 100% gross enrollment ratio school education. So we have also set up a target year, and this should be achieved by the year 2030. Okay, so this is the first important provision. And second provision is a gross enrollment ratio in higher education to be raised by 50%. Now in the primary and the secondary education, the gross enrollment ratio target is 100%. However, when it comes to the higher education, so the gross enrollment ratio to be raised by 50% by the year 2035, and around 3.5 crore new seats to be added in the higher education. Okay, so since we have the aspiration to increase the gross enrollment ratio, and at the same time we will be focusing on increasing the total number of seats in the higher educational institutions. So secondly, the major provision is there will be no rigid separation between the academic streams or the extracurricular activities. Now if you look at the current education system, so there will be a strict separation of education, extracurricular activities, vocational skills and the sports as well. Now we have been focusing more on rote learning. So if you look at the current education system, and we have not emphasizing on the physical fitness, physical well-being, sports and extracurricular activities of children. So they also play a very important role in all-round development of child, right? So however, the National Education Policy 2020 will actually bring 2 crore out of school children back into the mainstream. Okay, so there are around 2 crore out of school children, and they will be brought back into the education system. Now vocational education to start from class 6 with internships. right? So in this context, vocational education plays a very important role in making students employable, so they learn certain skill. So therefore, we also have programs like Sankalp and Strive that were launched with the assistance from agencies like World Bank. Okay, so vocational education will be emphasized from the class 6 with internships from various institutions, training institutions. So however, the national education policy has actually emphasized on a new system, that is 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4. Okay, so in this context, a new school curriculum with 12 years of schooling and 3 years of Anganwadi or preschooling, right? So in this 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 system, there will be 12 years of schooling and 3 years of pre-primary or Anganwadi schooling. Okay, so just remember this formula as well. Okay, so teaching up to at least grade 5 to be in the mother tongue or the regional language. Okay, so up to class 5 they should be mother tongue compulsory for every child. Now after that, there are some important highlights of the national education policy. So what are those important highlights of 2020? So firstly, this new policy of new education policy has emphasized or aimed at universalization of education from preschool to the secondary level with 100% gross enrollment ratio in school education by 2030. Okay, so this provision we have also discussed in the previous image. Okay, 100% gross enrollment ratio in school education by the year 2030. Okay, so this is also called as universalization of education. So after that, the 2 crore out of school children will be brought back into the school. So this provision also we have discussed. And the new school curriculum, that is 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4. So this provision also we have already discussed. Okay, so this emphasizes on 12 years of schooling plus 3 years of pre-primary or Anganwadi schooling for every child. Okay, so they will be ready for the formal schooling. And after that, emphasis will be placed on foundational literacy and numeracy. So this is very, very important. Foundational literacy and numeracy of every child is very important to improve the learning outcomes of every student. Okay, so there will be no strict separation of academic streams, and vocational education will be emphasized more. Vocational education, industry, academia linkages, so everything will be emphasized more, and therefore the overall objective is developing skills among the students. Now after that, the regional language, so up to grade 5, regional language compulsory for every student, and that has been recommended by the national education policy. Now if you look at the higher education also, around 50% of around 50% increase should be achieved in the gross enrollment ratio of higher education by the year 2035, and the government will also increase the total number of seats in higher education to around 3.5 crore. So apart from that, there are academic bank of credits, so that are academic bank of credits are also available. Okay, so the credits which are already achieved by the student will be transferable or will be made transferable in the bank, so academic bank of credit. So after that, the National Research Foundation to be established to foster a strong research culture. Now, strong research culture in higher educational institutions is very important to encourage and promote innovation and research. So therefore, in this context, National Research Foundation will be created, and it will take care of research in these institutions and research related infrastructure. And there will be tight regulation of higher education. Okay, so tight regulation of higher education, providing more autonomy to these higher educational institutions, and at the same time there will be a single regulator with 4 separate verticals for different functions, right? And apart from that, the affiliation system to be phased out in 15 years with graded autonomy to the colleges. So these higher educational institutions will be provided more and more autonomy to decide the curriculum, to decide recruit the faculty, and also develop, encourage research among the students. So everything will comes under the autonomy to the college. So providing autonomy will also improve the ranking of these institutions and their performance as well. So the National Education Policy 2020 actually advocates the increased use of technology with equity. Okay, so it has emphasized the increased use of technology with equity. I mean, equity generally involves equal access to technology to every institute and also at the school level. And for this purpose, a National Educational Technology Forum will be created. So National Education Policy 2020 actually emphasizes on setting up of a gender inclusion fund. So it is very important to create gender equality in education. Okay, so gender inequality in education and dropout rate among girls is also very high. So therefore the gender inclusion fund will help in achieving gender equality in education. So this National Education Policy 2020 emphasizes on setting up gender inclusion fund. Okay, so special education zones for disadvantaged regions and groups will also be created. Okay, so these are the major provisions under the National Education Policy. Okay, so these key features we have already discussed. However, the total public spending on education sector will be increased to 6% of GDP. So we are still lagging behind many of the major countries when it comes to spending on education. So therefore the overall increase, overall expenditure on education will be 6% of our GDP. Now if you carefully follow, the Ministry of Human Resources has changed its name to Ministry of Education. So now we have at the central level Ministry of Education. So there will be a separate technology unit to develop digital education resources. So to develop the digital education resources, so there will be a separate technology unit that will be created, and focus will be on universalization of education from age 3 to class 10 by 2030, and a mission to ensure literacy and numeracy skills by 2025, and mother tongue we have already discussed about this, and new curriculum to include the 21st century skills, like it involves coding, vocational integration from class 6. So board exams will be made easier and redesigned. Now if you look at the higher education programs, so we have also discussed about this higher education in improving the gross enrollment ratio in higher education, and also increasing the total number of seats in higher education, creating an academic bank of credit, and providing more autonomy to these colleges. So for education sector, National Education Policy 2020 is very important, and you can expect few questions from this topic as well. So I would like to suggest you to carefully read about this National Education Policy. Now after that we need to talk about the anti-defection law. So anti-defection law is also in use, and it is also very important that in interview you can expect few questions on anti-defection law. Okay, so the 52nd amendment that was passed in the year 1985 actually inserted the 10th schedule. Okay, so this now this 10th schedule actually contains the anti-defection law. So in UPSC prelims also there was a question that which of the following that the 10th schedule of the Indian Constitution deals with. Okay, so please remember this 10th schedule actually deals with the anti-defection law. So that was inserted into the constitution by 52nd Constitutional Amendment Act. So the grounds for the disqualification of a member of parliament or member of a state legislature were actually mentioned in Article 102 subclause 2 and Article 191 subclause 2 for both MPs and MLAs. Okay, so I hope you already knew about the grounds of disqualification. Okay, so one such ground is independent member joins any political party, a nominated member joins any political party after 6 months of his nomination. If any member joins any other political party from his the political party from which he contested, he will also be disqualified under the anti-defection law. So however, there are certain exceptions also. So one such exception is a member who can become speaker, he can resign from his party, he will be exempted from the provisions of anti-defection law. And 2/3 of the members decided to merge with another political party, they will also not subjected to the anti-defection law. So these are the disqualifications as well as the exemptions under the anti-defection law. Okay, for example, defected, so exempted member, so if he either gives up or voting contrary to the whip of that political party. And about the independent member and the nominated member we have already discussed. Okay, speaker or chairman, so he will be exempted and he can resign from his political party. And we also discussed about the merger of these political parties. Okay, so however, the presiding officer of the house, for example, the speaker of the Lok Sabha or the speaker of the state legislative assembly, have the power to decide the disqualification petition. Okay, so Supreme Court intervention of G. Vishwanathan judgment in 1996 case. Okay, so if we talk about the advantages and disadvantages of the anti-defection law, first advantage is stability and party discipline. This is very important because anti-defection law actually works as an effective deterrent against the defected members. Okay, so that helps in preventing instability and preventing regular elections as well. So however, there are certain disadvantages as well. So disadvantages means there's no timeline on the part of the speaker to decide the anti-defection law. And the members' freedom will also get affected because they have to act as per the will of the political party or will of the whip. So therefore it affects the freedom. And the anti-defection law has not mandated any time limit within which the speaker has to take a decision. And the biased role of speaker is also a major cause of concern because very often the members of a political party defected from the opposition to join the ruling party. Since speaker is mostly from the ruling party, he will not take any decision. However, recently one of its judgments, Supreme Court has said that the decision must be the decision of the speaker must be delivered within 3 months. Now after that, what is the need of anti-defection law? Why we need an anti-defection law? Okay, so it actually upholds the will of the people, right? So these legislators cannot defect the political parties from which they have elected. So that actually represent the will of the people. So therefore anti-defection law upholds the will of the people. Secondly, the anti-defection law to ensure the loyalty of members to the political party and its policies. Okay, so it continues or it maintains that the politicians remain loyal and they respect the policies of the political party from which they have elected. So after that, to provide a greater political stability by checking propensity of legislators to change the parties. So ultimately it checked the politicians to change parties very frequently, and that led to the instability and the fall of the government. And instability in a democracy is not a good. Okay, so frequent elections is also will lead to the decline of confidence and trust of the voters on the democratic system. So after that, it also facilitate the demographic realignment or democratic realignment of parties in legislature by merger of parties. Okay, so Anti-defection law is important to prevent non-developmental expenditure that is incurred on regular elections. Okay, so that are incurred on irregular elections. So however, there's a need for anti-defection law, there's no doubt about that, but anti-defection law requires certain reforms. So because the second administrative reforms commission and there are different commissions, they have recommended the reforms into the anti-defection law. For example, the decision to disqualify a member should be transferred from the speaker to the governor in case of a state legislature and president in case of a parliament or Lok Sabha. Okay, so that is the first reform, and even if it is with the Lok Sabha speaker, there should be a proper timeline for the disqualification, right. And the third reform that is being suggested is that when a member is disqualified as under the provisions of anti-defection, he will not be eligible for contest elections for 5 years or more. Okay, so these are the reforms that can deter a legislator to defect the parties. Okay, so this will also prevent the corruption and horse trading in the politics. So these are the major reforms that are actually required in the anti-defection law. Okay, so you have to understand the need for anti-defection law, why we require the anti-defection law. So what are the advantages and disadvantages, some basic facts about anti-defection law, and what are the reforms. This is very important. What are the reforms that are actually required in the anti-defection law? Okay, so that's it about the anti-defection law.